This is Ask Joe number 208. Here's a little snippet of a song I wrote yesterday.
I looked around and I found that it's coming apart at the seams. It's a land full of battered and shattered and broken dreams. They say that evil is hunting you. But I don't know what it means. I think that I could.
All right. Whoop.
If only I had enough time.
All right, welcome back. This is Joe Gilder. That's a little song I wrote. Chorus gets kind of cool. It's just a whole different vibe than I'm usually used to doing. So I hope you enjoyed that little snippet right there. I need to make a note here to fade that out lest I forget and it gets awkward. So thanks so much for tuning in. Those of you who made it here on the live chat, you are all troopers, and I think the world of you. And if you listen to the recording, even just the audio version, or maybe you tune into the YouTube version after the fact, whatever the case may be, I think you're awesome, and I appreciate your time and attention. Today I want to talk about briefly, for a few minutes, this is the first episode after the NAMM show, and that seems like to be the topic du jour. So let's talk about that a little bit before we jump in to your questions. If this is your very first episode, thanks for checking it out. Stick around. If you can make it live on Tuesdays at 1 p.m., there's a live chat. It's on YouTube Live, and you can ask your questions and get them answered, which is a pretty dope deal. All for free on the interwebs. So, NAMM is the National Association of Music Merchants. It's just a trade show where all the audio manufacturers get together, and a lot of my YouTuber and podcast and blogger buddies were there as well. I did a big streaming event from Lid Shaw Studio on Friday night. So if you're not familiar with Lidge, he runs Recording Studio Rockstars. He has an epic beard. He does lots of great interviews on his podcast, and he had 9 of us over at his studio the Friday night of NAMM to just do like a big hour-and-a-half live stream where we answered questions. We talked about NAMM, so if you want to hear more specifics about products and stuff that we saw, that's a good place to go. I didn't check out a lot of products. I checked out some, which I'll talk about in a second. And then we just talked about different stuff. There was a lot of talk of entrepreneurship and what it looks like in, the year 2017 to pursue a career in music and audio and all that stuff. So good stuff. I mean, Warren Hewitt was there, Pete Woj, Chris Graham, Chris Salim. I'm forgetting a bunch of them, but it was a good crowd. Really good crowd. And then yesterday, this is fun. Nobody knows about this yet because I haven't posted the Gilder Cam video. Warren Hewitt, well, I guess I posted a picture. Warren was here in this studio, sitting in this chair, yesterday. So if you don't know Warren from Produce Like a Pro, Warren is marvelous, and he's super cool and super legit. And he has just done lots of things in the audio world, like worked with, small bands like Aerosmith, Yeah. So super nice guy, and he wanted to come over and do an interview. So I was super thankful. And so that interview will be coming out at some point on his channel. I'm sure several weeks away because he interviewed a lot of really cool people that week. I'm sure I'm close to the end of the line, bottom of the barrel. I'm not being self-deprecating. It's just when he interviews people with Grammys, I'm going to probably go to the back of the line. Anyway, so NAMM was really fun. The summer NAMM show in Nashville is a lot smaller than Anaheim. It's a little less overwhelming. You can actually go and see a lot of folks. I don't feel like there are as many classes. I only went to one. That was somewhat interesting. It was with the country artist Sarah Evans and her producer. They talked about making her latest record. The big takeaway from that I got was they were talking about they had like really good session players like Matt Chamberlain on drums and a bunch of other Nashville guys that I don't know super well. And they were talking about while they were tracking the songs, Sarah, the artist, actually they had a mic set up and she would sing along with them. Now you could easily just have her record a scratch track, but they said there was something about every time they work with her, she's got a killer voice. When something happens to the musicians, when a great singer comes online and sings along with them, it does something. And they were saying it kind of takes their performance up a notch. Because if you're playing to a scratch track, that's, a scratch vocal is great. If you're playing just the music to charts and they're going to add vocals later, it's okay and you'll probably still be fine, you know, especially with these awesome Nashville cats. But it's really great to have the singer singing along as you're tracking. So I'm not as great of a singer as her, especially if I'm playing and singing, but I may try to do that this weekend at the tracking session for my EP, and it might just be fun. So we'll see. Who knows? There's gonna be a lot of moving parts this weekend, and hope to see some of you there. I don't know if anybody who's attending is here on the live chat. There was a handful of regulars who were coming, so I'm super excited about that. What else? I like to check out. Obviously, I was hanging out with the PreSonus guys, so be on the lookout for more stuff from me and PreSonus with regards to the mixer here, the Studio Live, but also Studio One in general. We got together and ate some octopus and talked business, which was fun. And I got to go, a lot of the guitar stuff I was more intrigued by. So for example, there's a company called Tonewood Amps, and they make this little box. You mount these magnets inside your acoustic guitar on one of the like X frames, and then they have this plastic device that basically sticks to the back of your guitar from the magnets, and it has a transducer on it. You plug your guitar jack into it, so a little cable from your guitar to that. It generates effects like reverb or delay or rotary effect, and then it sends the sound. It actually transmits the sound through the body of your guitar, so the reverb comes out of your guitar while you're playing. Super crazy, super not practical, but really interesting. Imagine playing, where I saw it being interesting is if you wanted to play house shows where maybe you're playing completely unplugged, so it's just you standing there with a guitar, suddenly you're adding reverb to your guitar. That's really interesting. And of course, when you plug it into a PA system, it can also send those effects to the PA. That to me is not as interesting. I could use a pedal board for that. But the acoustic side of it is super interesting. And I showed that in Gilder Cam. Another company I really liked was it Classic Audio Effects? Super nice dude. Just run by a guy and his wife from, I think, North Carolina, South Carolina. And they just make a couple of cool guitar pedals. What's cool is instead of, well, the thing I'd known them for is they make a volume pedal that's the size of a normal pedal, and instead of being like a hinge sort of volume mechanism, it's a wheel, and you roll the wheel up and down with your foot, so it looks like a wheel to like a toy car, but it's fairly big. It's about probably inch and a half wide, and you wheel it up with your foot. So I think that might have been one of their first products, was just volume pedals that don't take up a ton of room on your pedal board, and then they had a powered version for true bypass and all, or buffered bypass and all that. But then they also had like this reverb where the wheel would roll up how big the room was on the reverb, and a delay where the wheel would roll up, I think, the mix knob on the delay, or the delay time, or the repeats, or something. Super, super, super cool. I could see how that would be. I don't know of any pedal that lets you like wheel up the delay, aside from using like an expression pedal with something like a Line 6 M5 and programming all that, but this is just kind of built into the pedal. I thought it was super cool. What else did I see that was interesting? I saw my buddies from Roswell Pro Audio. They make that mini K47 that I sing into. They're going to send me another one of their mics to use this weekend, the Delphos, which is a little more higher end. We'll see how, hopefully I'll get it in time, and we'll see how it sounds this weekend on my vocals. And what else? Gear-wise, that was about it of things that I thought were interesting or remarkable. But then the getting to hang out with folks like Pete Woj, who I've known for years. We're good friends. We've never actually met in person. That was awesome. Getting to see Warren Hewitt, who kind of showed up to that thing at Lidge's place, which I wasn't expecting, and then him coming over to the studio, which was a nice surprise as well. Super fun. And he works with Matt McQueen, who I knew through a Facebook group I'm a part of, who I'd known for a long time. He's been in the home studio corner world, and I got to meet him in person. So I met a lot of people that I'd only met through like Skype or just social media and YouTube, which was super duper awesome. Super duper awesome. I can't even talk. Other than that, I was really struck by just, as a person who tends to be isolated, and as a person who tends to kind of be on my own, it was really validating to get out there and to go see a lot of people and meet new people and make new connections. Not tons of new connections. I didn't meet every person at every booth, but I did meet some people I already knew, and I met some new people, and maybe none of them will turn into something tangible that I can say, hey, remember when we met over here and now we're doing all this cool stuff together? But it just reminded me, like, that's the world we live in. We went to a party at Sputnik Studios, which is where Vance Powell is, and Mitch Dane. And, you know, I saw an old friend, I saw new friends, I introduced old friends to new friends, an old friend introduced me to a new friend, and we actually went to school together, and we started talking about the stuff that I was really interested in. So it just reminds me that if you are like me and you tend to hunker down in your little studio cave and never get out there, go pick something to go get out there the next, whether it's an AES meetup or just a show in town or just whatever you can find. Go meet people, go meet real people in the real world. And it's funny how things just kind of tend to happen when you do that. Pretty cool, huh? Boom. All right, let's dive into your questions. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. I saw a question from, get your questions ready, folks. Live chatters, I'm leaning heavily on you today. Velvet Dog says stems. Quick word on them. Why and what's their purpose? So you're talking about, I assume, people talk about like providing stems of, say, the drum mix, the guitars, all the vocals, all the keyboards. The only time I actually use stems for any real purpose is really the last time I did it was with my album Better This Way when I did a remix competition. And rather than giving everyone all the tracks, which felt like a little too much for someone who just wants to do a remix, I had seen, I think Switchfoot had done this a few years prior with their song Afterlife. Really heavy song. They provided the stems, so they were mixed stems with all the effects, like the delay and stuff on the vocal. Then you could mess with them. And I started working on a bluegrass version of the song. I didn't finish it, but that gave me the idea to provide stems. Then people could keep my drums or use their own, but they're not having to mix everything. It's all kind of, you could just pull in the stems and it would sound like my mix. Then you could take things in and out. There's pluses and minuses, obviously, to both. I know there are people who like to give the mastering engineer their stems, but I don't understand that because the mastering engineer's job is to take your final mix. If you give him stems, he's essentially remixing it for you, which maybe there are some mastering guys who like that. I don't know any personally who prefer it that way. They'd rather you commit to something and mix the song. If you're into saving the multi-tracks for just to have access to later and archival purposes, or saving the stems so you can use them in some other form, to me that's interesting. Like, save all the stems, and then if someone needs an instrumental version for a commercial, you can pull the stems in, mute the vocal, or mute the vocal in certain spots, and then give them the commercial, the vocal down version of the song. To me, that's more of a practical reason, but I personally don't render stems unless I've got a specific reason to, if that makes sense. Lewis says, where can I find Joe Gilder stems? Well, you can find Joe Gilder multi-tracks, which are just the raw audio files for all of my albums. There's a little course, not really a course, just a product you can buy called Mix Practice. And when you join, you go to homestudiocorner.com/practice. You join. I think the price is like $47. You get access to every song I've released since the album Out of Indiana. So it's over 50 songs now, and I'm doing 4 EPs this year, so that's at least 19 or 20 songs that'll be added to that collection. So you buy it once, one price, and you have access to all those tracks and any that I add in the future, which, if you've noticed, I'm pretty prolific lately, so it's basically like signing up for ongoing free multi-tracks, which will all be done for the most part in my studio, except for this next one. That'll be at a nicer studio, but that's fun too, right? Delani Orchestra. It's crazy. Your last name's Orchestra. What are the odds? Stems are often asked when you submit music for licensing. Yes, exactly. Sometimes they need to remix the music to fit with dialogue around it. Absolutely. I think if nothing else, and I'm bad at this as well, make it a habit to at least print a what am I trying to say? Instrumental version of the song. If it's not full stems, which full stems might be a great idea too, at least just export a pass of your mix without vocal, so then you have both available for if you want to start making videos, right, to promote your studio, and you want to have just instrumental music behind it, but you don't really want someone singing. Like, I kind of want that for some of my Gilder Cam videos. I should probably go back and export all my songs without the vocal, because instrumental is helpful in those situations. Pat Dupes says, are you still using a Stage Snake as a patch-based solution? Yes, I am. And and I've also added in one of those ART. Hang on. one of those ART little just XLR patch bays. It's not even a patch bay, it's just a patch panel. Let me show you right there. You see this? It's literally just 16 XLRs in a single rack space that have just XLR connections on the back, and I run those into my mixer. So if I want to plug into channel 4 on my mixer, I don't have to like pull the desk out, go around and plug it in. I can just plug it in here and then it's going there. It's just a little convenience thing. But then the snake lives in the other room. So anything happening in there, I send a headphone send down the 1/4 inch connections, and there's a headphone amp in there, and then I have all those routed. Basically, the cables you saw here on this XLR jack are the ends of that snake, and I plug them wherever I need them to go. Caleb Hawkins says, I just want Joe to know I stopped tracking my new album to hang out here and listen. I don't know if that's awesome or bad, Caleb. I'm just kidding. Thanks for being here. It's a nice little break, and then go back and rock some music. Tell us about the album. Is it full band, acoustic? What's going on? Visual of the plate reverb Joe is often talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, Truckee Kruger says, any exciting PreSonus news you can share with us? I mean, the main thing is what I said in the last episode. I got a 24 channel, the new Series 3 mixer. So that's cool. And then when I got that, I didn't realize that the new Studio One Fat channel has these different versions of the EQ and compressor. So you can use like an LA2A or a 1176 just built into Studio One. So I've just started messing with those. Those compressors are cool. They get loud really quick. So I want to be careful. It's really easy to just crush the volume on that and just kill your whole gain structure. So I've used it just a teensy tiny little bit, but I dig it so far. And it's cool that I can actually call up the Fat channel settings inside of Studio One in my mixer, and then I can vice versa. So I can pull them up in my mix later. If I find a cool sound during tracking, I just want to repeat it in the mixer as well, or in Studio One as well. Plate reverb. I didn't think you could see the plate. I ate lunch really quick. My studio was rebooting, and I was trying to hide the plate before I showed you the thing. I guess you saw the plate. Busted. You got me. I eat. I'm so embarrassed. Carter Watson, keep on rocking. Welcome. This is a live stream that I do every week on Tuesdays called Ask Joe, where I answer your questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. I wasn't eating at the console. I was eating to the left. I leaned over. Nom, 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 nom. And then I came back. That's totally fine. What do you think of the Event 20s? I know a lot of people who used them. I don't think they still make them anymore, right? Have you ever heard of Kratom? It's a type of tea that has similar effects as coffee. And it kind of gets you more into that creative flow as you're working and gives you a lot of energy. That sounds scandalous, David. It's just got a little bit of LSD in it. You heard the plate. Ah, those silly plates. Okay, let's go back to actual questions. Sorry, scrolling back up to catch up on... Tim says, in your latest tracking session for your new EP, do you tweak the tracks with EQ and compression while tracking, or do you wait until mixing? Well, if you remember, the one that I did back in February, that I tracked in February, I jacked up the snare drum because I had the compressor set too aggressive on my ADL 700. So since then, I've been a lot more aware of making sure I listen to things by themselves to make sure that's not happening. But I also have kind of pulled back on using much compression on the way in for that reason. I'll still EQ, but I'm going to make sure I listen to it by itself to make sure that EQ is the right move. But that's kind of the only... That I'm not against it. I still think it's great. I especially think EQ options are nice if you're doing, for example, when I was doing the different things where I'm trying to beatbox in the mic, so I'm doing like boom, boom. I'll get close to the mic and do all that, but it still usually needs a little extra low end. So if I think about it, I'll run it through the EQ and just boost around 100 hertz, so it just fattens it up on the way in. That way, if I forget to EQ it later, it's still nice and fat, and I like nice and fat things. David Burke, what do you think of plugins that add the vintage analog or tape sound? Couldn't an EQ plugin provide the same sound? Great question, David. Obviously, I just tend to use whatever's in Studio One, and they're adding some more of that stuff, which is interesting. But it's been so long since I've gone like I'm going to buy a third-party plugin to emulate something. I think they're great. I don't think they're bad. I just haven't felt a really big urge to use them. So if you use them, great. And I used to, but I will say, I used to think like you. I'd say, oh, I don't need a tape plug-in. I can just roll off some of the highs and accomplish the same thing. But that's not the same. It can sometimes give you the same result, but it's not exactly the same. It also does something in the low end that you can't just do with EQ. For example, when I was getting back into playing, or really getting into playing electric guitar, setting up a pedal board, doing more playing live, I was, like most guitarists do, I was on the quest for the best set of pedals. And at one point, my buddy Pete Woj told me to get this Fat Boost from, who makes it? Full Tone, I think. The Fat Boost 3. And it's just a boost pedal that has a little bit of a drive knob. And hey, we got to 100 viewers here today. We don't usually get that many. Welcome, everybody. So the Fat Boost doesn't usually... it doesn't add a ton of volume, but it does add this kind of thickness. And at the time when I bought it, I also had an EQ pedal that I was messing around with, and I actually tried matching the sound with just the EQ pedal, rolling off some highs, boosting some lows, and it wasn't the same. The EQ made it darker, but this other one, it kept some of the brightness, but took away some of the high end, but it had this kind of fullness to it that you couldn't account for with just EQ. So does that mean you need that in your mix? No. But I would just say it is different. Is it better or worse? I don't know, but it is different. Do you have any recommendations for isolation cabs for guitar? I don't. I've never used one. Most of the time, over the last decade, I've just had the guitar amp in the room with me and just put earbuds in and gone with it. But now my guitar's in the other room. I don't think, unless you're just talking about like you live in an apartment and you've got to keep it quiet. If it's just, if you just need to get it out of the room because you don't want to have it so loud in the room with you during an all-day tracking session, you can always just put it out in the hallway. I mean, there's so many studios I've been to in Nashville that won't, we're already using the booth for acoustic guitar, so they'll put the amp out in the hallway with a mic on it, and it's fine. You know what I mean? But if you're talking about actually making it quieter, I don't know of good recommendations because I don't use them. I know they're out there. Or, another option, I think those booths can get expensive. You can consider getting like an 11 rack, or even like the, Sam, what's the thing? The not the Helix, but the other one. The amp emulator that's gray. It'll come to me in a second when you all tell me in the comments. But you can get something like that, and then you don't have to have an amp at all. There's no volume. You can do everything on headphones. It's a valid option, and a lot of like actual professional, like you don't have to take it from me, like pro Nashville guys, more and more are using that as their guitar rig for sessions. Like they'll show up at the session with that thing. Come on, people. What's it called? Kemper, thank you. With the Kemper and maybe a few control pedals for it, and that's their entire rig. It's wild, but that's true. And then some guys, I've heard of other Nashville guys, they take that Kemper and like just a powered PA head, like a powered PA speaker, like a QSC K10. That's their live rig. It's insane, right? Just totally crazy, but that's how good it sounds. So if these guys are digging it, that might be an option for you, especially when you think about those isolation booths. I think are expensive. So for the same amount of money or a little bit more, you can have lots of different amp sounds and keep it super quiet. That's something worth exploring. All right, let me scroll back down and see what other questions have come in. Tom said the Pod XT. Simon Colstead's here. What's up, Simon? How long did it take you to work full-time in music, not counting the Sweetwater gig, that is? Good question. So I moved down. We left Sweetwater in 2009 in the fall. And it was July 2011 was, I think, my first month where I didn't have a job with anybody. So that was about 2 years. 2 years of doing Home Studio Corner, going hard at it, and client stuff too, but it wasn't until then that I felt confident enough to be able to quit that last job that I had. Good question. I should talk more about business stuff. I think it's just interesting and fun. We should do that sometime. Let's do that, shall we? Kemper is awesome. Yeah, it is. I don't own one. I've used the 11 rack a lot, and I still think it's great too. I'm sure the Kemper is better. The 11 rack does not suck, however. I just recorded a band. Hang on. Let me go back. There was somebody responding to a question. Quinn says, by the way, my middle name, if you didn't know, is Quentin. Or if you're from the South, you say Quentin. He says, what do you think, this is Quinn, who says, what do you think is the best way to convince a high school band to practice to a metronome before recording? They seem to be convinced that it's unnecessary because they're a live band. Oh, send them to me, Quinn, and I'll just smack them. No, there are bands that just can't do it, and there are bands that won't do it. And if they're a won't do it band, I think you have to tell them, like, listen, when you don't play to a click, you have to get the entire song right every time. And everybody has to get it right. So, like, you're tracking drums, bass, guitars, vocal keys. You have to all decide on which takes the best. The chances of you being a little high school kid, and I remember being in high school, I thought I knew everything. The chances of all of you with, you have minutes of experience versus like professional musicians with decades under their belt, the chances of you all nailing it on a take together are slim. And then we'll take 10 takes trying to get everyone to get it right, and no one will. And you can't fly the keyboard part from take 2 and paste that into the full band take from take 7 because they're going to be at different tempos because you didn't record to a metronome. I think have them practice. I mean, that to me is a big deal. So you can do 3 passes. Drummer says, take 3 was mine. Bass player says, yeah, take 3 was best for me. Guitar player says, take 3 was awful, but take 2 was great. And you can quickly just go through and everyone's lined up because they all play to the exact same tempo. It's an efficiency thing. And there are a lot of bands who play live to a click, which is what the Sonic solution here is saying, which is totally true as well. When I've played, the couple shows I played last year, Tim Horsley brought a drum machine. He used it to count in. I think he just had it in his ear and played along. And he would keep time on the hi-hat. If I had a part by myself, I would play along to his hi-hat so we stayed on tempo, which is good because JoJo likes to speed up immensely, and that was super helpful. And he would throw it off, like if we just were rocking and he just didn't want to stay with it, he'd kill it. But it was just him that was listening to it, even in a small venue. Worked pretty well. Here's another thing. So if they don't buy into that idea, which is going to be, it's a hard sell, tell them that people play better on click tracks. Once you get used to actually playing to the metronome, something happens and the whole band locks in better. I remember at my church, we had no click for years. We had a new worship guy come in. He was all about the click. And I noticed that as soon as, after the initial, like, oh, I don't like this, when we would play like these longer kind of sparse arrangement parts, everything felt super locked in because everyone was right on. Instead of it always speeding up and slowing down, it was there. At the same time, I can also appreciate those times when we're saying, you know what, let's just kill the click and let's just play and let's allow it to speed up and slow down because sometimes a song needs that. But more often than not, the benefits of a click far outweigh the downsides because you get so much flexibility to make a good recording that you just don't have if you're forced to everybody play it right the first time. Gary Fox is here. Gary says, most people who don't like a click mistakenly think they will lose their feel. If you play with one, you'll play with authority. Listen to Zeppelin, that's authority. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find a professional drummer who didn't play to a click, and I imagine most of them prefer it. I haven't asked all of them, but I bet they prefer playing to a click because it's a steady thing. It's funny, my buddy Tim Horsley, who plays drums on a lot of my stuff, he was saying so many people talk about, oh, that drummer, he's so behind the beat. I love the way he plays behind the beat. And he said 9 times out of 10, it's not he's behind the beat. It's just everybody's playing early. Everybody comes in early and he's on the beat. And so they think, oh, he's got this cool groove. He's just playing in time. Everybody else is a little fast. I thought that was kind of funny. And I'm still not the best at playing to a click, but I've gotten better over the years. Also, a click can speed up and slow down if you record it. That's funny. Joel Polanco says, I did the mix practice and it's awesome. The tracks are super clean and ready to mix. Plus, the songs are awesome. Well, thank you, Joel. I think what's cool about mix practice is you see the progression of me as an artist and as an engineer. So you can go pick a song from out of Indiana and you'll hear it's still kind of a cool song, but the recording got some jacked up parts to it. And then you fast forward to Someone to Blame from earlier this year and the snare drum's messed up. So I'm capable of messing up all along the way, but a lot of the raw tracks feel and sound better, and the production gets better over the years too, which I think is pretty fun. How do you go about telling the artist that they are putting too much and taking away from the song? You mean like they're recording too much stuff That's a hard one. There was a video going around. It was mainly in like the worship church crowd. It was a popular guy. I'm not going to remember the name. If someone knows it, leave it in the comments. But he did a video on essentially, here's what it's like to not overplay. And so he would talk for a minute and he'd say, let's go drums. Here's an example of a drummer overplaying. And he'd be playing a fill every, 4 bars. He's just filling all over the place and super crazy hi-hat stuff. And then they showed him playing a insane groove. And like guitar players and keyboard players can do that a lot too, where they have all these cool skills and they want to show them off. But I think the biggest thing is, there's overplaying, which is a thing. You just have to have that discussion. And then there's also getting on top of the vocal. Think about bluegrass. Go listen to a really well done bluegrass record, and you'll hear whenever there's someone playing something melodic, there's usually no one else playing something melodic. They do such a good job of, all right, this person plays a riff here, and then they back up, and then this person plays a riff, but they're never playing on top of each other. So the biggest example is you should never be playing on top of the lead vocal. If there's a lead vocal, Khalid Glover is here. What is up, my friend? It's been a while. Good to see you here, buddy. So I forgot what I was saying. If you're playing along and anything that calls for attention is happening while the lead vocal is singing, it's got to go. So that's a great rule of thumb. And then really in general, if anyone's playing a sure enough lead part, everyone else needs to just be playing more chords and more just kind of supportive material. I mean, the biggest solution is to let them hear people who do it well, and then flip over back to the song they're doing and say, see how yours is a lot busier? And I think that would work. But man, so much of what we do in the studio is psychology, right? Is acoustic treatment as important when you record in a small space? My apartment, for example, is only 23.5 square meters. Well, I don't have my meter to foot thing here. But anyway, small spaces, the thing is, if it just depends on the room. If the room sounds pretty chill, I think you'll be fine. Like this room, when I put up this wood wall, I took down some of the treatment because it was covering up the pretty wood wall. And to me, that was an okay trade. I like that the room's a little more live. It's got a little space to it, which is kind of cool because my back room is pretty dead. So I have kind of some options. I would probably, in general, prefer a more dead room if I had to choose, just because if I don't want to have extra room sound, if I'm not looking for that extra room sound. But a couple of gobos or a mattress or a blanket can go a long way into taming down the sound of a room. What I would have you do is go to my website, go to homestudiocorner.com, go to the blog, and just look up, just go scroll to the bottom and search the word Auralex, like the company, Auralex. I did a review of their Ruminator kit they sent me years and years ago, and I recorded a vocal. It's just a normal bedroom studio. This is several studios back. And I recorded a vocal in the room without treatment, and then actually I recorded in the next room that was the exact same size room, or close enough. Recorded a vocal in that room with no treatment, and then in the room with treatment. And when you listen to the first vocal, you think, that's not bad. Then you listen to the second vocal in the treated room, and you think, oh, I didn't realize how much room was in the recording until I heard it a lot cleaner. I'll put the link in the chat here, but you can go find it on Home Studio Corner and listen to those examples. They're right there on the page. What happens is when you capture a lot of room in the microphone, you end up, when you start mixing it and you compress the vocal, that's when you start hearing a lot of that room. So what I would suggest is, treatment can help if the room noise is a problem. If the room sound isn't a problem, then no, you don't have to worry about treatment. It's really about whether it sounds good or not. You know what I mean? But yes, heavy blankets and things that you don't have to buy can actually go a long way. They may not look as good, but nobody can see it when they're listening to your recording, unless you're doing a video. Gary Fox says, putting in a plug for Joe's mix critiques. Almost done with my remixes from Joe's guidance. Made my record much, much better sounding. Thanks, Gary. That's something I started doing maybe last year, where you can hire me to give you a critique. I'll listen to it and record an audio of the song, and I'm stopping it to critique along the way and giving you suggestions. I do it both for mix critiques, also just if you've got a recording and you want critique on the recording before you go to start mixing. It's turned out to be pretty cool. Pretty cool. Moving and shipping blankets also work really well. Stefan says, what do you think about the beam effect of guitar cabinets? Do you think it's worth... I don't know what the beam effect is, so I probably don't have an opinion on it. Sorry. Doing Schleb says, question, I'm recording XY mic guitar and single voice. Preamp level for left and right guitar is set at the same input. Should I maintain uneven output levels on the guitars in the mix? Good question. If it was me and I was recording a vocal and a guitar at the same time, I wouldn't go stereo on the guitar, because inevitably, no matter how you set it up, the vocal is going to be off to the side of one of the mics. So the vocal will come through one of the mics more so than the other. So there's really no way to get it balanced. Either the guitar is balanced or the vocal's balanced, and you can't get both. I would just use one mic on both if you're going to track them live. But to answer your question, I tend to try to balance the levels on the mics, because depending on where you set it up, one side might be getting more bass, so it's going to be louder. I'd rather them be even. I'm not as concerned about doing a very pure job of the preamp is exactly the same level, so that we're getting exactly the same level on both sides, so we hear it exactly like it was in the room. I'd rather just hear it balanced than exactly like it was in the room. So you try it both ways. It doesn't really hurt either way. You can always adjust the volumes later, but I like to just kind of have them about the same. Simon says, when I have all days to work on music, I don't get as much done as when I have limited time. Do you have advice on how to keep focus when you have a lot of time available? First world problem. No, Simon, it's for real. Like when you talk about people who, quit their jobs to do their business full time, suddenly when they have all this time, they kind of freak out, because they've always had to kind of scrape and hustle for any time to do the thing they want to do, and now they have all this time. I'm not super great at this, but for me, what I've found is when I have a plan, things go a lot better. My latest shtick is I dedicate my mornings to the most important thing that I need to be doing, whether it's kind of bigger picture, most important thing, or the most pressing thing at the moment. I'll dedicate the mornings to that, and then afternoons, I can do more of that same thing, or afternoons can be more administrative stuff, because you only have so much willpower at the beginning of a day. It runs out just like your car runs out of gas. So getting the most important thing done early will make sure that it gets done, but then also you sometimes can tap into a little bit of momentum that'll give you some energy going into the afternoons or the evening to keep you going. But everybody's different. You kind of have to try different things. But I've always found that a plan is way better than no plan. Even if you don't keep the plan super well, having one going into the day is still better than just going in and saying, I'm going to work on music today. Okay, what are you really going to do today? I'm going to record guitars on these 3 songs. Now that's something specific. Even if you only get one of the songs done, you at least were aiming for something, and I bet you got more out of it than if you just went in all open-ended. How would you summarize what is parallel compression? Parallel compression is when you want the sound of the signal by itself, the dry signal, because you like something about that, but you also like the sound of it compressed, but you don't like either one by itself. So you want to have both. That's what parallel compression is. It allows the uncompressed signal to come through, so you get all that nice, rich, not slammed, not compressed, not squished sound. Then you also blend it in with the squished sound, and then that's what parallel compression is. Parallel processing it's the same thing. You could do parallel processing with other effects like distortion, but in general, that's what I think. Keith Sparks says, hey, Quentin Gilder. I like being called Quentin. Have you done an update in your mix workflow video from 2016 in the VIP section that I found? I don't know. It hasn't changed a lot since 2016. I've changed my template a little bit. I may need to go back and watch it and maybe update it. Who are your biggest influences in mixing? Or who was it? Gosh, probably like Graham Cochran, because he and I mix songs every month together, and I learned stuff from hearing him mix. I couldn't tell you who mixed the big records that I love. I'm just the kind of guy, I don't care, really. Does that make sense? Dueling mixes is great. I'm on my 2nd month, and I'm getting mixes done. They're not great, but I'm learning. That's the deal right there. Robert, I guess it is a shorter podcast today, but it's coming up on 40 minutes, so I feel like that's pretty good. But I got other stuff I got to get to. I got to go write a song, so I'll see you later.